Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator. I'm all about capturing and curating career and life stories as a meaningful way to celebrate a milestone moment like a big O birthday, anniversary, retirement, or graduation. And I'm at my best when curating photo books that move your memories from the basement or your phone or your computer to the coffee table, giving you and your family and friends access to these treasured memories for years to come. I also love curating and capturing life and career stories through this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? It's a series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they're not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Lori Hanson, who is the Success Whisperer. Love that title, Lori. So welcome, Lori.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
I always love a title that gives a little bit of intrigue, and then we have to figure out, what is this going to mean? And so I'm sure there's some sort of coaching involved. We're going to pause for a moment to hear from a very happy Life Story Curator client.
My name is Eleanor Allen, and I recently finished a project with Kathy about my mother's life story. And the reason I wanted to do her life story was that she's first 91 years old. And second, we've been talking about it for years as a family. I have 4 brothers and many nieces and nephews. And we'd never gotten around to making the book. Then one day I was out with another friend who's a mutual friend of mine and Kathy's. And she showed me the book that Kathy had made about her parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And I thought right then and there, this is the answer. I got to hire Kathy to get this life story finally done for my mother. So I did. And working with Kathy is just a joy and a pleasure. So first, how do you organize somebody's 90 plus years into a story that's succinct, but also very interesting? And Kathy helped guide myself and my niece and one of my brothers. I have 4 brothers. One of them worked on this project with us intensely into the storyboarding process, and then working into, okay, these are the chapters of her life we're going to work on, which we went by decade. And then for each decade of her life, what do we need? We need this many pictures and this many vignettes. And then Kathy also brought in this great idea to put in QR codes of recordings. I hadn't even thought of that, but we did several of those. Some are my mother's audio recordings. We captured some of those audio files. Some are video recordings of her telling stories of her life that we have in the book, but of course, much more detail when we have the recording. And some QR codes are also documents. So we put a link to my father's autobiography that he had written for us before he passed as well, and my grandfather's autobiography that my father had done interviewing my grandfather. So very special, and those come to life as well in the book. So I encourage you, if you have any inclination of documenting someone's life story in your life, definitely go for it. It's worth the work, and the product, in this case, my mother's story, is absolutely wonderful, and she was over the moon with joy. So don't wait, do it. Document the life of your loved ones or whatever special occasion there is, and work with Kathy, and you will have a wonderful experience.
Before we get into what it means to be the Success Whisperer, I always like to start with the icebreakers. So if you would, tell us where you grew up, what part of the country or world, and where you are in the birth order in your family, and how you think both those things, the geography and your birth order, help shape you as a person.
Boy, that's a loaded question.
Pretty big question to start out, hon.
Yeah, you'll see why in a moment. So I was born in Saginaw, Michigan. My family moved, my parents moved a lot. So we were in Detroit by the time I was 2, Cedar Lake by the time I was 4. Then we went to Hinsdale, which is just outside Chicago, went to Columbus, Ohio, went back to Hinsdale. My family moved a lot. So what I like to say is I claimed the Midwest. So between Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, where I lived 3 times, and Michigan, I'm that's my birthplace, is I'm a Michigander. And then I like to say that I came to Colorado before the rush. So that was before the first rush in 1990. Yeah, so we moved all over. Birthplace in the family is actually a funny one because I'm the youngest of three. I have two older sisters, excuse me, and then there's a 10-year break. And my mom had my little brother, and 4 years later, another surprise with my little sister. So same parents, 18 years between oldest and youngest. So I like to say I'm the baby of the first, I'm the middle child, but I'm also the oldest of the younger two. So I raised two kids, and that's my, yeah, I've raised my two kids. That was my thing.
Wow.
Babysitter back in those days,
Yeah. Well, that is so what I love about that question about birth order, because you do find that a lot of people like, well, I was the oldest, and
Yes.
then parents remarried or whatever, and then I became a middle, or I became the youngest, or, of that other group. And anyway, yeah, it's kind
I
of
was robbed. That's what it was. I was robbed.
you didn't get to be the baby forever, right? Which is maybe what a lot of people strive for. So, what caused your family to move so much? Where was your dad in the military, or your mom?
He was not. That is the question people often ask. So they were working at, so my parents are Seventh-day Adventists, and so they would go work at these parochial schools. They have boarding academies, and my dad in the early days was an accountant. And so he would go in and clean up the books, as he says, and then he'd be like, oh, this is boring. And so they'd move somewhere else, and they moved somewhere else. And he wanted to become a hospital president and get into hospital administration. And so that was the move then to Hinsdale. So I spent first, second, third grade in Hinsdale, just outside Columbus. And then he got an opportunity to actually run a psychiatric hospital in Columbus. So that's the longest growing up that I lived anywhere. We were there 11 years. And then mid-college, they moved back, and he became the president of a hospital where he had gotten his start. And then I don't know how many locals are listening, but he came out here and was president of Porter Hospital in Denver, built the cancer center, built Littleton Hospital, built a Vista Hospital. So you can tell I kind of have a thing, he was just a visionary. He was an amazing, amazing man. So he was in all of this before all the corporations started.
Yeah. Wow. And interesting
So
that
that's
he
why.
was very clear on what he wanted. I want to run the hospital. I want to be the president of a hospital, and very early on then set on a path to, well, what are the things that I need to do to ready myself for that? Very interesting. So then, you mentioned this birth order, how that kind of impacted you. How about all these moves? I mean, I would guess that you're always starting over, meeting new kids, meeting new kids, right? I mean,
do we want to go there? I was so happy for second, third grade, Kathy. And the move between third and fourth grade smacked me upside the head big time. I went from maybe 15 or 20 kids in my class, happy-go-lucky kid. And we moved to this place where it was a smaller school, and I became child number 7 in the fourth grade. I was not accepted initially. And that was beginning of very tough times of, these kids don't like me and they're mean to me. And I remember sitting in the bathroom on the hamper crying, telling my mom, can't we go back? That was not a positive thing. So you add that, I'll tell you something funny too. You add that was also the year my brother was born. So I got in trouble. I love telling the story. It makes people laugh. I got in trouble at school. The teacher called my mom and she said, Lori was drawing today on a piece of paper, and she was drawing genitalia, male genitalia. Mom's like, well, she has a new baby brother. She's never seen that before. So yeah. So that shifted things, and I was a bit of a rebel from an early age, and we'll get more into this, but that really started this I don't fit thing.
Well, yeah, and in such a small school, a lot of times when the school's bigger, you can find your group, you can find your kind of tribe or your people where you do fit. And I think everybody's got this feeling of I was never the popular one, or there was always someone.
Oh yeah.
But in a small group of 7 kids in this school, that would be really.
And as parochial, it was, it was not Catholic, it was Seventh-day Adventist, but parochial. So there was all these things around that as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit, but it's kind of on the same line then. Are you an introvert, extrovert, or an ambivert?
I am, at the heart, I'm really an introvert. I was in sales for many years, so I know how to relate to anyone. I grew up very, very musical, so I love This is why I love being a keynote speaker. I love that exchange of energy. I was a bit of a ham. That's how I got attention in that their family. So I actually love the exchange with energy. And when I'm out and about, I can be an extrovert, but it is a learned behavior. I used to go to parties and just stick to the wall in the corner. But because of my sales background, I had to learn how to communicate with people I didn't know. So that is just one other little droplet here. That's where my nurturing instincts came out from not being a mother, all that entertaining, all that stuff I did for my clients. And now, I love hosting events. So that's where all that nurturing stuff comes out for me.
Oh, okay. So some great insight there. I love that question because you never know what people are how they're going to
Never know, right? Yeah.
where they're coming from. So, okay. So on the fun meter, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a couch potato and 5, the life of the party, where do you put yourself?
Oh, not life of the party, not at all. Not my comfort zone. Not a total couch potato. I'm usually out and about more, but with my dog, as we were talking before we came on, I have a senior dog who just isn't up to being out in the mountains, taking hikes and that kind of thing. But I am not someone who needs to be out. I'm not someone who needs to be seen. I don't have to have. Actually, let me share it with you this way. I am big into wolves. I'm big into Caesar Milan. I'm big into energy. And Caesar describes front of the pack, middle of the pack, back of the pack dogs. And I was having issues with one of my sisters, which we've had for years. And this hit me. I went, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. So middle of the pack dogs, this is my little sister. Oh my God, life of the party. I'm here to play. I want to have fun. I want to have fun. And these dogs, right? They just want to have fun all the time. Back of the pack dogs are the sensitive dogs. These are the dogs that are therapy dogs. They're service dogs. And they are the dogs that if you've ever heard or seen someone that has issues with an aggressive dog, they walk the dog, they're not leading confidently. So the dog is out front going, oh, I don't know what to do. So they bite, they get aggressive. That's a sensitive dog when you're putting them out of your place. Then there's front of the pack. Front of the pack is the leader, the one that's making the plans. It's one that's taking care of everybody. That there would be me. So I'm a strong leader. And it's funny, after all these years, my sister and I both being in our 60s, I went, this is why we disconnect so bad. She's a back of the pack dog, very, very sensitive. And I'm like, oh, come on, we're going to get through this. I'm determined. I got willpower. So that's a very different way, but that's how I love to share that we're all different. And so once I heard that from Caesar, I watched that a few months back, and now I look at people and go, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that, because it's funny. That's kind of what my birth order question is a little about too, because there's so many tendencies there. But it's funny. So you almost are, like you said, you have more older or firstborn sibling tendency, but yet then with the sister who's the middle, you're like, oh, wait a minute, we're not following our roles correctly because she's older, and et cetera, et cetera.
And that's hilarious that you said middle sister, because that's the one that I have these issues with.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So very wired, very, very differently.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that example. Okay, we're going to shift over to the risk meter. Same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being low risk taker, 5 being high risk taker. Where do you put yourself?
At this stage of my life, Kathy, I am a high risk taker. After going into business for myself, when I was in corporate, I was attached to that paycheck and the vacation time and the base pay and all of that. And I was low risk, and I got on my own. I'm like, okay, I have this idea. Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah, we'll get into what happened as a result of some of that. But yeah, I am a high risk taker at this point. I just was so guarded so much of my life, and I don't live that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so funny.
But common sense risk taker.
That they're like, oh, when I didn't have any responsibility, I was a high risk taker. Now I have all this, so now I'm low. But okay.
Yeah.
So the gloves are off. All right.
Calculated risk, though. Do let me qualify that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Lori, let's spend a little time talking about what it means to be the success whisperer, what you do, who are your clients, etc. And then we'll get into how did I get here?
Okay. Well, the success whisperer is a moniker that was given to me by one of my coaches And it just, you know, when I put on the cape or the coat or whatever you want to call it, it just felt right. And people love it. So what do I do? Well, I am really inspired and dedicated to helping female executives and leaders to understand that there are no limits, to help them reach their next level. And this really gained a lot of clarity for me through the pandemic, because I looked at all of my clients that I coach, and I coach men too. So my thing is, I focus on female leaders and executives, and the right men show up, because I sold to men for years. So I'm very comfortable being one of the boys. So I looked at all of my clients. Every single one of them had issues speaking up, getting their voice in the room, asking for what they wanted. And so this whole thing came about amplifying your voice, turning up your confidence, empowering your life. Empowering gets overused, but I've developed it into more of this amplify your voice and what is it you need to reach that next level. So how I share that with women, predominantly women, is that I do personal coaching. I do some mastermind groups or peer advisory groups where we're working, to have people help each other. And then they're also coaching with me. So you get kind of that double tier there. But and let me say, I love one-on-one coaching. A lot of people hate it and they like the group coaching. I love, because I have a whole tool bag of things that I use, and I'm a little bit woo-woo. So I take my corporate girls as far as they'll let me take them over there. And sometimes they'll go, okay, that's a bit much. I had one client go, okay, wait, that's a little too esoteric. I'm like, okay, so we come back. But my first love and what I enjoy absolutely the most is keynote speaking and speaking for an event and hosting events. So I have this wonderful, let's call it a tripod of speaking, hosting my own events, and the coaching that I do. The events, there must be an event or party planner in me somewhere. I planned my parents' 25th anniversary, wedding anniversary when I was in high school. I did their 60th, and I just did their 70th last year. So we did a 80, 60, 80, and we just did a 90, 70, 90 because my mom's 3 weeks older than my dad and they got married in between. So
wow.
really, yeah, I really am into this whole thing, and it's so much fun with women, the gifts I can give them and all of this. So I am this year finally having my Revitalize Yourself retreat again up in Vail. We've just pulled that together. So those things feed me. And if you're familiar with the term zone of genius, that's really where I thrive and what I do without even thinking about it. But more importantly, what I'm able to help my clients do is amazing. And I can tell you some more things about some of my clients in a little bit, if that's somewhere we want. Some pretty amazing things to help them get to their next level. I do have 5 books, but I'm concentrated more on the coaching and the speaking.
Coaching and speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, you just light up when you're talking about all of that, Lori. So it's so cool. I can't wait to kind of hear how did we get here. So let's go back to junior high and high school. What did you want to be when you grew up? Did you have a master plan? Did you think, oh, at some point I'm going to be this success coach?
I was going to be a hospital president, just like my dad.
Oh.
I just idolized probably isn't the right word, but I really looked up to my dad. And I was the one girl in the family that really loved that. I grew up, now we're going over here again. I grew up very, very armed in my masculine energy. I was 3 weeks late. My name was picked out as Brent David because they had 2 girls. They were ready for their boy. So I was like, so I grew up I was trained to be, I'm a tomboy, into fast cars, into speed, into all kinds of stuff. But I also like to go to the galas and, I can do that. I can do that part too. So yeah, I wanted to be a hospital president, just like my dad. And as I got out of college, so my first job, I did go to work at a hospital. I was not going to go ride my father's coattails. I didn't want to be in that. I dealt with that growing up. We worked all over the psych hospital and you're the president's kid. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And after a couple of years, I went, And my dad said, I don't know why you want to do this. I'm not my own boss anymore, because then the corporations had started. This was like 82, maybe. So all the HMOs were starting shortly after that, all of this stuff, and it was really shifting. He goes, you don't want to do this. And I didn't care for all the red tape. And my joke is, I wanted to find out what a bonus was.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
the real incentive, huh? That was the bonus.
Yep. Yep. So that's where I started. I started out in human resources. I did compensation and benefits for about 6 years. And then I just said, wow, I'm in a department that has no respect, and I'm a female. I'm cut out for something different. And I bolted out of that. So yeah.
Now, was that HR role was in healthcare, or was it in a different industry? Or
It was in healthcare initially, and then I worked for a company called Combined Insurance. There's a whole thing here. So W. Clement Stone started Combined Insurance, and he wrote a book about positive mental attitude. Guess who else worked for mentored with W. Clement Stone is Jack Canfield, who we'll get into later, but Jack Canfield, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, who I've followed for years since he blew up to be this big author.
wow, okay.
Some interesting ties here, Kat.
Yeah. So you get into the insurance industry, you're wanting to get out of HR. Is this when you went into sales then?
No, so I went from the insurance, and then I went to work for community college, still doing the compensation and benefits. And at the community college, we put in a new payroll benefits system. And so I was kind of managing that from the human resources side. And I got talking to one of the consultants that was there, and he made it sound kind of fun. So I went, shoot, let me go be a consultant. So I don't remember what the percentage is. I remember what the numbers are. I got a significant increase for going in as a consultant. So then I was a road warrior for 6 years. So I traveled every week.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I wrote training manuals. I did training. I worked with people. So this is where this stuff that, you look back and go, oh, so all of that fed what I'm doing today. I didn't know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people would evaluate me. I always got really high marks on my training. So I spent 6 years really facilitating other people. And then I decided I wanted a dog.
You wanted a what? A dog?
Dog.
Oh, okay.
So I got my first dog and got off the road. So
I was gonna say, which means you can't be a road warrior anymore because you got
right.
something tying you to one place.
That's right. Yeah, I did get married in there. And my other joke was, so they built DIA while I was on the road. And so I said, well, I want to be off the road before that starts, because that was 17 miles farther than Stapleton for me. And, of course, they had all the baggage issues. So I could have been on the road another 9 months and been okay. But that was kind of my onus, was get me off the road before they open DIA.
It's so funny that you would gauge it based on an airport. Career choice by airport. But
Yes.
It does have to do with a lot, just like you make career choices sometimes by just geography, right? Where do you want to live? What city? What industries or types of jobs are in those cities? So, and then even within a city, how close do you want to be to your job versus your fun and your friends? So, okay. So it sounds like you were pretty much picking what you wanted to do. Were you ever laid off through there? Or did you ever get stuck in your career, or you just pretty much went, oh, let me try this, let me try that?
Yeah, well, so I moved from Chicago to Colorado while I was on the road. They said airport, sure, fine, go ahead. I got married during that point. That was not my best decision, but it was a very abusive situation that I had to deal with. And so I came out of that in 96. And at that point, when I got off the road, I found a place to work here in Colorado. Was I intentional about what I wanted to do? No, I just wanted to find, something. So I got hired at a consulting company here. So I stayed in consulting. Initially, a gal trained me to be a project management consultant. So I would teach people how to manage projects. We would go in and create a custom project management process for them. And then I would train them. And then I would train them on like Microsoft Project. And back in the day, there were other tools. So again, here's all this public speaking stuff, right? So I was there training people. And so then I went out and was managing projects. And one day this client was talking about, boy, we've got all this time here and we've got this system you've got. And I went, you know what? Well, we just wrote this program maybe you guys could buy it from us. So I go back to the office and tell them, and they went, we need to get her in sales. So that's how sales started. And I was not comfortable. I had an opinion about salespeople.
Ah, okay.
So I wasn't in love with that, but I started out as what they call an account manager. So it wasn't like compensation based, it was bonus based. And then from then I moved into more comp. And so it took me a year or so to really get comfortable with what I was doing. And I'll tell you a quick funny story. The first time that I took a client out for lunch, I'm just talking to them and talking to them and talking to them. And it was a guy that I knew really well. And he finally goes, Lori, you didn't bring me out just to talk. What is it you want to talk about for business? So I had to have a client go, okay, let's get to the sales.
Yeah.
Because it was not natural.
Oh, what are we really doing here?
Yeah.
Let's get down to business.
Yes. So yeah, then I was in sales for a long time until I started my business. And you asked, were there layoffs while in sales? Yeah, there were 4. So by the time I had the last layoff before I started my company, I was ready. I was like, okay, I've been through this before.
Yeah. So how did you overcome your mindset about sales? Because, it's difficult to overcome those mindsets, right? They're so ingrained and you believe them to be true. What did you do?
Well, let's back it up just a little bit. And that is in 96, I filed 90 days before my 4th anniversary to get a divorce. And that's when I discovered Jack Canfield. And he had a tape series. My sister actually had it. And it was called Self-Esteem and Peak Performance. And until then, so for those of you that can't see, I'm holding maybe a 1/2 inch between my fingers. I had about that much self-esteem at that point. And so that's how I learned as I got into sales to set and achieve goals. And then there was a little thing he said that says, no matter what you say or do to me, I'm still a worthwhile person. I had that on a sticky note in my desk drawer. So this thing of sales and learning to set and achieve goals and learning about mindset, that was all a big shift that started about 96. And I had to learn to become comfortable talking about money, that it was okay. So it was all that, money doesn't grow on trees. People are like, you have to overcome all of that. And I thought I did a lot of that. And we'll talk later about how there still was a lot more of that to talk about. But that's, as I started to get those comp checks, that was kind of fun. And I loved, again, taking care of my clients. My clients followed me from company to company to company that I moved to because they knew I would take care of them. I didn't know it at the time, that was my zone of genius, just taking care of people.
Yeah, back to that nurturing nature
Yes.
that you brought up in the beginning. So you didn't really, it sounds like you didn't take that sales training course. You took a self-esteem course.
I took a self-esteem course. Yeah.
But it's all about relationships. And that's what you brought to the table, which is what when you hear about those successful salespeople, that's what they are. They're solving problems for their clients, building relationships, building trust. I mean, those are the things that that make sales happen.
Yeah, I'm very aesthetic. One of my gifts is that I read people, and so I could tell where somebody was at. And then I was exposed to sales training a couple of years later, and that was really empowering for me. And part of that was also esteem. I didn't realize it, but teaching you how to say, so I think we have a problem. And I started using it on my family first before I would use it in a sales call. But I then was introduced to something called Sandler sales training, which was very empowering for me and made me comfortable in my role. So yeah, a lot of things back there in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, it's all this behind the scenes stuff that I got to say what I think listeners really want, right? Because they can hear the what did you do and the different roles, but it's what are the things were you doing behind the scenes to make yourself successful? Because it looks some people make it look so easy. And then you're in your own head looking at them going, man, how does she, I would guess people around you thought you had great confidence and self-esteem. Because it was probably a front you were putting on, or that you just way to them, but you on the inside was just not.
Well, yeah, I don't know, because I was really determined. And so what I was doing is I would go find a business problem, and then we'd have to create a solution or build. There's so many stories I could tell you, and then you got to put a team together and you're managing the engagement and all. So if I couldn't get the help I needed internally, I just found a way to do it. Very, very determined. So what did that do? That pissed off coworkers. I was always good at that. But I'm going to take care of my clients. So that was definitely a big part of it. But I would want to share something funny with you. Earlier this year, I was invited by Jack Canfield's other half, Patty Aubrey, who helped build Chicken Soup into a $60 million company. And I was doing some coaching with both of them and then with her. And she goes, Lori, you should create a sales class for these people that are taking Jack's training. They don't know how to sell themselves. So while I'm working on that, I go pull out all my Sandler notes because I have a full book of all the written notes. I was in it, man. So I didn't just listen to it. I found all those notes. I was like, wow, look at me. Had to do a pat on the shoulder. I was like, look at me, man, I really invested in it. And that's for all of you that are listening. It's not just a surface. You hear an athlete talk about it. You got to dig in. You got to do the work. You've got to build that understanding and make it so that it's fluid, because that's how you reach people.
Yeah. It's not just take one class and pick up a few pointers and think you can throw those in. It's who are you being? How do you bring it into who you are and how you put it? Yeah. Well, and they also talk about, if you learn something new, if you teach someone about the thing you just learned new, or you talk to someone about it, then it's stickier, right? And then you with your whole training and writing up training manuals. So that's probably how you learn to almost train it to then do it. And then, so it's.
Yeah, I highlight, I write, even now there's things I watch on YouTube and I stop it and take notes. That's how I put it in my head. I'm still very paper oriented.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I'll type on my phone and email it to myself. That works too.
Yeah. And it also sounds like you're tackling the mindset issues, overcoming limitations, but also tackling there's certain techniques and there's certain approaches that you can take that help you be more successful in setting.
And what fits what fits. Yeah. Because as you coach, and I've coached with a lot of people in addition to the coaching I've done, and you have to, I don't want to use that word have to. It's important that you take what this person offers that resonates, what this person offers that resonates, there are coaching programs I haven't finished because I got what I needed early on and I really wasn't resonating with the rest of it. And I just want to give your listeners permission to go, okay, so if I'm doing something and I'm really not feeling or it doesn't feel right, it's okay to go, I already got what I needed. Stop and look and say, what did I get? I just want to encourage your listeners to do that, to say, am I getting what I need? And if not, it's okay to go, bon voyage, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Sometimes we do need permission. And I'm one of those people because I'm someone that I'm a finish the book kind of person. I start the book, I finish the book, even if there's probably maybe just 2 books that I haven't finished because I will just plow through it. And I'm just like kind of thinking, it'll get better. But the 2 that I didn't finish, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Lori, then how did you end up then launching? You said there were 4 layoffs. Then was it from one of those layoffs then that you said, you know what, I'm doing this, I'm going out on my own? And maybe you had already been doing some coaching on,
Yeah. So what I'm doing now is very different than how I started. In the early 2000s, I got reconnected to a guy that I went to high school with. And that was really awesome. And I thought I'd found my soulmate, and I called him my Zen master, and I tried to get him to set goals. Well, he was not driven like I was. But anyway, we had some time together. And through that, so my history, I have to drop this in. My history includes over 20 years, about 25 years of an eating disorder called bulimia. And for those that go, oh, okay, I never threw up. I could not make myself throw up. So if we have to put the label on it, I was a non-purging bulimic. So I would put on 10 pounds 2-3 days when I got upset, diet and exercise, diet and exercise, diet and exercise. And then the next thing happened. And so I did that for 20, 25 years. Every Sunday I weighed and measured it, so I was caught. This is what some of those things we talked about caused in my life. Plus a very, very controlling mother that was all about this religious thing that I knew from a young girl was not going to be my jam. So in the early 2000s, I got introduced to energy work, and that was amazing. And then I got introduced to this book, and this person was channeling, and it kind of freaked me out, but it was interesting. And then I got more into Eastern philosophy. And so through this and the work that I did, I also was introduced to amino acid therapy or nutritional therapy, which is balancing of the brain. And I had all these issues from all these antibiotics I had been on for years because I had ear infections from a young kid. So I had all these health issues in the 2000s, gut issues, hearing issues, blah, blah. So I work on that. And then I kind of found my healing with the bulimia through that. Now, I still had a lot of really bad head tapes, but I was doing much better. I was a very functional person. I never went in the hospital and, but body image, huge body image issues. So I said, so what happened was the relationship that I was in, he was a musician and he said, have you ever written lyrics? I'm like, no, but I always thought that would be cool. So we wrote 13 songs together. I sang, I started to write more of the melodies, and I found this creative side of myself that while I'd been in corporate was gone. Now I know I was very creative the whole time. Sales is totally creative. But as a result of that, I said, I don't think I've ever seen, I did some research, there's no books written about healing from an eating disorder using alternative approaches. So my first book was called, it started with Pop-Tarts, An Alternative Approach to Winning the Battle of Bulimia. So I wrote this book, and about 6 months after I wrote the book, I lost my job and I went, I can't go look for another job. I've got to go on my own. I had nothing. I knew I wanted to go on my own at this point, but I was, in a year or so. And so it was like, boom, there you go. And I just dropped into it. So here's where the high risk taking came in. I just went, okay, I'm going. And I had kicked him out by this point. And because I moved to Southern California to see if we could make it or not, because he didn't like Denver. And so I invested everything in that. But Kathy, I didn't have a coaching program. I didn't know what I was going to speak. I had nothing. So what I did have is when they cut me loose, I had just closed one of my goals, a multi-million-dollar deal. And they said, well, we're still going to pay you for the deal. I'm like, you're right, you are.
Yeah, you are.
to help while I got this started. And so I'm a bit of a rebel. And so I built my own eating disorder coaching program. I didn't want to be a nutritionist. I didn't want to be a counselor. My thing is mindset. And I knew this stuff about these amino acids. And so I created my eating disorder coaching program. I have helped young girls that were in the hospital that didn't get what they need, help them get completely into a great place. 2 of my young girls wrote their hospital essays about coaching with me. And you want to talk about something sweet. One of them emailed me and she goes, Lori, what's that candle that you used to burn in our sessions? I was like, what? That made a huge impression on her. So I was doing young girls. I was working with older people, but I didn't take insurance, which, of course, people want. But I was blessed to help a lot of people find their recovery. But I lost my hat, my chute, my shores, my home in Southern California. I lost everything in an attempt to start this business because I wasn't making enough money. And so that led to me coming back to Colorado. And then I'll just drop one more thing. And then me being me, and this being a lot of women, well, I haven't tried hard enough. I need to give it another year. And so I pushed another year, and yeah, so that's how it started. That's how it started.
It was around coaching around eating disorders. I get it now. Yeah. And you start where your passion is, and yet there's a whole business side to it. But you also had all that talent, skill, and experience putting programs together. So you to say, oh, I didn't have any of this. Well, you didn't have any of that for that particular thing, but you had all the skills to put it together. So
I just built it. Yeah. That's the part of me that I love. I've always been a rebel. I was always in trouble as a kid. But I was just, and I was thinking about this recently, as many things as I've gone out coached and looked for help on, marketing is mine. But the coaching was never something. I have 14 years of experience. I have life experience. I've built programs. I know how I can help people. So and now that I have that kind of confidence, nobody goes, so are you certified? Well, I have Jack Canfield's Success Principles certification because I was using all that for years anyway. And I wanted in his inner circle, which, as you heard earlier, I was working with them. So I believe strongly in the things, and Kathy, what I do is I pull things together from all over. I use meditation, visualization, all kinds of tools because we don't have to talk it all out. Some of it's energy, some of it we need to let go. And what I did was I brought all of that amino acid nutritional therapy as my brain imbalance into what I do today. So I had a gal come to me, wanted to be a speaker, didn't know what she wanted to speak about, didn't know who she wanted to speak to, couldn't take criticism. Well, her endorphins were really low. So we get her brain back in balance. Her husband's like, tell Lori I love her. So that's a part of everything I do today. Things that I learned helping girls with eating disorders, I brought forward to the work I do today.
Yeah. So it's also, sounds like you deal with the physicality, but the brain chemistry and all of that stuff, as well as mindset, as well as skills and goals and talents and all of that stuff. So, wow.
Yeah, I start with the foundation of nutrition, and I have a cleanse, a 28-day cleanse for clarity, I call it, because our body is the foundation. If you're not putting the right things in, how can you go out there and go, I'm going after the next level?
Yeah. And, or if you keep doing the same things, but try to change one little thing, sometimes that you get sabotaged by those other things. So financially, doing the eating disorder coaching wasn't making it for you. What did you do then? Did you go out and then get another like corporate job and then relaunch again? Or did you have a big aha moment?
Yeah, well, so in the beginning, I was making some money, but I brought an assistant on right away, and I was giving it all to him. He was amazing. And I was giving it all to him, and I was doing what I did in sales, was to get so many things going. I couldn't possibly follow up on all of them, but I really thought the speaking would take off. And 2009 National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, I had 3 speeches in the same week. I'm like, this is it. So the Pollyanna in me was misleading me. And so I moved back here. I had to borrow money from my dad for gas to move back to Colorado. It was that bad. And I moved in with a girlfriend, my 2 dogs, her 2 dogs. Still, this was the part where I'm still pushing. And I was making just enough. And then I ended up in a home that my brother had redone and my dad owned. So I moved into this home, was able to stay in my own home, but it went from bad to worse. So I'm thinking, okay, this is it. This is it. I built a community. I was doing all these things. I was like squirrel. And I ended up at a point where I literally was living on popcorn and oatmeal, literally. And I lost my Malamute at that point at age 6. And I know I couldn't have fed her the next year. She just went, you know what? I love you, but I'm going to go.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I lost her really young. And the month that I was losing her, I had 8 speeches. So I'm all over traveling, doing these speeches. Meanwhile, she's, checking out. But so what happened was I found out about a book, and I had just enough money on a credit card to get this book, and I could read it on a free Kindle app, and I stayed up all night and read it. And at the end of the book, it said, if you can't pay the bills, you can't enroll clients. Go get a job. So I went and got a job, found it on Craigslist, selling ads for hotels, the little 3-ring binders, the most demeaning, humiliating, horrible treatment I've ever had in my life. Straight commission. They didn't even pay your gas or anything. I was in Albuquerque. I was all over the place doing this. And you couldn't leave until you sold as much as they had sold last year. But I started to make some money. And as I started to make some money, then I started to, pull myself up above survival mode. And I called a really, really good friend of mine. And I said, Tim, is there any way you could help me? And he goes, Laura, why don't you come on as a program manager? Mind you, that was the 90s. This was 2014. I went, well, maybe I could dust that stuff off. So I interviewed with them. They went, oh, this is great. We'd love to have you. And okay, so we're going to send an offer. This was in March of 2014. And then it got really quiet. I waited for 6 weeks. And then they went, I'm so sorry, we have a hiring freeze. So that's when I went and did the, the hotel thing. And then the first day that I opened email in 2015, now mind you, I've just interviewed all these women, what they want. I'm ready. Now I'm going to focus on women. I've decided to let go of the eating disorder thing. It's apparently not what I'm here for. So I'm shifting gears. So that all happened during that summer. And the first day I opened email in 2015, I get a note, Lori, we're ready to move forward. I'm like, and so I said, no. And then I was so relieved.
Yeah.
I just figured this out. So I went, my joke was, I was like a flower in the desert, just going, oh, just give me, just give me some liquid, some food. So I was at that point, $150,000 in debt. I had maybe $200 in the bank, nothing. I owed my family members. I owed my brother or my sister that gave me money to put Sasha down. I mean, it was right. So that's where I was. And then I'll tell you a little bit more as we go. So that's where I was when I went back.
When you went, and then you took the program manager job and
I took that. I was
that steady paycheck,
and then continued to build my business. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I did that.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, Laura,
Double duty.
I could keep going, but we do need to start wrapping up here. So why don't you talk about how you kind of got out of, are you still doing the program management and your senior? Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
give us
yeah,
this piece and then we'll get into the wrap up questions.
Yeah. So what I did, and this I feel is very, very important to share. So what I did was I started working on my money beliefs. And I did a personal investing in my money beliefs and realized that that part of me that loved the paycheck and all had never expected to be an entrepreneur. And I thought people were going to figure out that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I did a lot of investing in that. And when I started working, my sole focus was to pay off the debt. I'm like, I got myself into this. I'm getting myself out. I am not declaring bankruptcy. And I paid that debt off in 2 years.
Wow.
I paid it off in 2 years. That's all I did. The other part of that story is 3 months after I paid off the debt, I stumbled onto an opportunity to build a new home. And I had no money. I'm like, well, I got 10 months to save for it. I'm making good money. I'll either do it or I don't. And I moved in, that was in 2018, and built a brand new home. And then I went from being an employee to being a contractor, which gave me a lot more money so I could stash. And so last year, actually tomorrow is my 1 year anniversary, July 1st. I've been back on my own. So I did 6.5 years of double duty. It was stressful. It was frustrating. I wanted to have all my energy to do this, but that all laid the groundwork. And I'm very incredibly blessed to have been through that. One of the things that gives me is this ability to relate to women at any level and say, you know what, I've been about as low as you can go. And I crawled myself back up. And I have a beautiful sign just outside my office that my nieces did for me. They painted for me. They're very talented. And it says anything is possible, because I call this my anything is possible home.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh man, that gives me all goosebumps. And that,
yay,
since your nieces, painted it too, that they obviously have been along for this journey with you.
Oh yes. And
seen the lows and now the highs, and that now you're in your zone of genius and how you're bringing and helping so many people. So wow. Okay, so now we're kind of here. And now we know how we got here. This is, very cool. Let's go ahead and wrap up with the 2 questions then. What do you think has served you best then, when you look back through all of this, right? And all of your experience and all the different things that you went through, what do you think served you best?
I am so I jokingly said in sales that I was going into pit bull mode. I am incredibly determined. I have a strong heart. I have a strong will, and I just am not going to get up. I mean, there was one morning where I laid in bed and said, I don't think I'm supposed to fall through the cracks, but I just never, ever gave up. And I love sports. And this is why I love tennis. I love golf. I love watching that mindset. And this is what fed a lot of this intrigue. I just don't ever give up. And that is a choice. That is a choice to say there's a way over this, there's a way around this, there's a way under it, there's a way through it. Never, ever give up.
Never give up. I love that. Well, and you have so many times in your conversation today talked about how you changed your mindset about big things that you didn't even know you had. Probably limiting beliefs about. I mean, many of us do that, right? All of a sudden it hits you, whammo, the whole money thing, the sales thing, the am I an entrepreneur thing, and everything you've touched on today. I'm like, okay, did that. Okay, probably could do more work there. Yeah. Wow. Okay, but I love that pit bull. That's going to be a quote in there. So, okay. Okay, well, one last question to wrap up. Again, I could just keep going all day with you, but we do have to have an end at some point. Any words of wisdom that impacted you besides anything is possible, I guess? Well, or maybe that's what you want to use, that you would like to share with our audience today?
So it's a two-pronged. So like I said, I have the anything is possible over there, right outside my wall, which I believe, but what I'm using now, what I say all the time, what you'll hear if you go to my website or anything that I do, you have no limits. Only limits we have are those in our head. And that's really, Kathy, my goal is to help people understand what that means. And how do we continue to shift the mindset and our emotion and our vibration and our frequency? I'm going to go there. And so that we're really understanding how important our focus is. And if I'm focusing on things that make me feel horrible, how that's pulling me down. And if I focus on the fact that the blue sky is out there and it's warm and whatever those things are that make me feel good, that's what brings you closer and closer to understanding that you have no limits, plus all the mindset stuff. But it's at the simplest level. If I could help everybody understand, the sky's the limit, cliche, but it really is.
Yeah. Well, and it's so easy to say those words, to kind of believe that, but then to apply them to yourself and really make
that's the thing.
decisions. Like I remember my husband's niece graduated from Princeton, and she got this full ride scholarship. She was from a small town here in Colorado, full ride scholarship. And she graduates and she's, I'm just like, wow, the world is so open to you now. What are you going to do? And I thought, why don't I apply that same thing to me? It doesn't matter that I'm at the time in my 40s. Why am I not looking at my life the same way as her about just jumping in and just like you said, there's no limits ever. But yet we, now that I'm this, I have to have this salary or these insurance or this, or, there's all these circumstances, I guess, or qualifications that we put on things. So
yeah, the more we grow, I have a picture on one of my keynotes of a baby laying in a bassinet. It's like, at this point, you have no beliefs, no patterns, no habits. There is nothing stuck in your brain at that age. It's learned. And that's why we have a choice about it. And I get really passionate when I talk about it.
Anytime you talk about your work, your energy and everything just goes up. It's so cool.
Thank you.
So Lori, we're going to wrap up here in just a second, but tell us, you mentioned to me earlier that you've got an opportunity that listeners can take a quiz on your website, right? So tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll go ahead and wrap up.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Yes. So I have, you can find it by going to voiceconfidencequiz.com, because what I'm doing is being here to support female leaders and executives and women that need to up their confidence, to amplify their voice, to empower themselves. That's why I created this. So I want you to go out there. Quizzes are fun, right? We all love taking quizzes. And I've had people that have really strong confidence do it and go, oh, I didn't realize I had a little blind spot over there. So it'll provide some enlightenment for you. Just go take it, look at it. You'll get a feedback on where you're at and where your opportunities are for improvement. So I would just love to have people go take that and see what their score is and have some fun with that.
Yeah, I always like a free giveaway and some insight, right? Not only listening to your story, but then seeing now how you work and what you could bring to the table and the value that you could add. So awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to have to go out and do that too, because there's been different points in my life where I've had that. I think I've got the strong voice, and then other times, I got the doubt creeping in, and those limits start to come in. Mm-hmm. And on any given day, right, we're on a high, or sometimes we
right.
So. Well, Lori, it has been a pleasure. And again, I'll put the link to your website and your social media on my website. But listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below, and then you'll be alerted as other interviews are published. And you can find this interview and the others that I've done on lifestorycurator.com. It's under the blog section. And then that's where I'll post Lori's social media, and then we'll have the link directly to this voice confidence quiz. So you can check it out and check her out if you choose or want to be thinking about working with her. So on that note, I'll say stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing those stories. Have a great day.